Beyond the ice wall, why is the true shape of the Earth being hidden from us? Greetings to you, brave seekers of truth who are not afraid to ask the most uncomfortable questions and challenge any dogmas, even those established for decades. You are here precisely because deep in your soul you have long sensed something wrong in that artificial picture of the world imposed on us since early childhood through colorful textbooks and state media. Imagine that everything you were taught from childhood, from school globes to NASA space images, is part of a grand deception, carefully planned over centuries and maintained by the world's most influential institutions. What if the Earth is not a ball spinning in an endless vacuum at all, but something else? Flat, motionless, enclosed by an ice wall, behind which is hidden the truth that humanity is not supposed to know. You might say this is nonsense, but why then can't a single independent researcher fly over Antarctica without special permission? Why do all commercial aviation flights avoid the southern hemisphere, preferring complex routes instead of straight lines? Why even today, in the era of smartphones and satellite communications, can't anyone just go to the edge of the world to check everything personally? These questions are not accidental. They are keys to a door behind which lies one of the most carefully guarded secrets in human history. And today we will dive head first into this mystery to understand who, why, and how is hiding the true shape of our planet. We are used to considering our Earth a small ball rushing through an infinite cold vacuum. But have you ever thought about the presence of real practical evidence for this claim in your daily life? Why do civil engineers, when designing bridges, canals, and railways over vast distances of thousands of kilometers, never take into account the curvature of the Earth's surface in their most complex calculations? In this article, we will break down in detail and step by step exactly what is behind the so-called ice wall and why the global elites spend trillions of dollars from people's taxes to maintain this global myth. Think for a moment about how modern global cartography actually functions and why all aviation routes in the southern hemisphere look extremely strange and completely illogical from the point of view of the geometry of a sphere. If you look closely at an ancient map of the flat Earth, where the center is the magnetic North Pole, you will suddenly see that Antarctica is not a small island continent at the very bottom of the planet at all. It represents a giant and continuous ice ring that completely encircles our entire world and keeps the waters of the world ocean from spilling into the infinite void. This majestic ice ring is that very insurmountable wall beyond which access for an ordinary simple person is strictly closed by the International Antarctic Treaty, signed by all the leading world powers back in the middle of the 20th century. Why do modern states, which for decades have not been able to agree on a single important political issue, show such amazing and frightening unanimity in protecting these lifeless ices? The answer to this question may be hidden in the materials of the secret expeditions of the famous Admiral Richard Byrd, who in the 40s of the last century set off for the South Pole with an entire naval fleet and aviation. In his personal diaries and very rare television interviews, he spoke openly and confidently about the existence of vast territories beyond the South Pole, significantly exceeding the United States of America in size. He described amazing lands completely free of eternal ice, with incredibly rich vegetation and clear signs of highly developed technologies that do not belong to any of the modern nations known to us. After his triumphant return, absolutely all the data obtained was immediately and strictly classified, and the famous admiral himself was forever removed from public speaking under the convenient pretext of protecting national security. Doesn't it seem extremely strange to you that after such a grand geographical discovery, interest in active research of southern latitudes was suddenly replaced by a total and strict ban on any private expeditions? Official academic science insistently claims that some magical force of gravity holds us on the surface of a spinning ball. But let's try to look at this from the point of view of simple human logic and clear physical experience. The concepts of density and buoyancy explain much better and more logically why a light balloon always flies up and a heavy stone falls down, without resorting to invented magical forces of invisible attraction. If our Earth really rotates around its axis at a speed of more than 1,600 kilometers per hour, why don't we feel even the slightest movement while on its surface on a quiet, windless day? Why should the huge mass of water in the oceans, which in the physical world always seeks to take a perfectly flat horizontal surface, suddenly bend and obediently wrap around a giant sphere? These questions may seem too simple at first glance, but it is they that smash to pieces the entire complex mathematical model that is presented to us as the only and indisputable scientific fact. An alternative version of the structure of our amazing world offers a much more consistent and sane explanation for all the natural phenomena we actually observe. In the logical model of the flat Earth, our sun and moon are relatively small celestial bodies that move in strict circular orbits directly above the surface of our earthly disk. They act like powerful directional spotlights in a huge closed hall, illuminating only certain areas of the surface at different times of day. This is a simple explanation for why we see the same stars in the same constellations for many thousands of years, although according to the official version, we are constantly flying through an expanding universe at an unthinkable cosmic speed. The ancient great civilizations, such as the wise Egyptians, the mysterious Sumerians, and the enlightened Hindus, always described our world exclusively as a motionless plain surrounded by a great ocean and securely covered by a solid firmament. Let's start with the simplest thing, with what we see with our own eyes. When you stand on the seashore and look into the distance, the horizon always remains a perfectly straight line without the slightest hint of curvature. If the Earth were a ball about 12,000 kilometers in diameter, as official science claims, then already at a distance of 30 kilometers, large ships should disappear behind the horizon, starting with a hull and then the masts. However, sailors for centuries have reported the opposite. Ships go into the distance in their entirety, gradually shrinking to a point but not falling behind the curvature. Moreover, modern powerful optical instruments allow us to observe objects at distances that are simply impossible on a spherical model. For example, from the shore of Lake Michigan, you can clearly see the city of Chicago on the opposite shore. The distance is more than 90 kilometers. According to calculations for a spherical Earth, the buildings should be several hundred meters below the horizon line and be completely invisible. But they are there, sharp, clear, as if standing right in front of you. Is this really an optical illusion, or maybe our world is arranged differently? Official science, of course, will answer you with terms like atmospheric refraction or optical illusions, but think, why do these explanations change so often? Why in the 19th century did scientists seriously discuss the possibility of a flat Earth, and today even a hint of doubt in its sphericity is automatically branded as the madness of a lunatic? It is important to understand here, science is not a dogma, but a process. And when a process turns into a faith protected by censorship and ridicule, it is no longer science, but a religion. And like any religion, it requires obedience, forbids questions, and punishes heretics. Remember how in the Middle Ages the Church burned those who said that the Earth moves around the sun? Today, the role of the Inquisition has been taken over by the media, academic circles, and even social networks, where anyone who dares to doubt the cosmic truth will be immediately called a conspiracy theorist, a fool, or a fraud. But is the desire for truth a crime? Or maybe those who fear questions are the real deceivers? Now let's move on to the strangest and most disturbing element of this story, Antarctica. Officially, it is a continent covered with ice, studied by the international scientific community, but in reality, access there is strictly limited. The Antarctic Treaty was signed, which prohibits any military activity, mineral extraction, and most importantly, free movement. No private plane, no researcher without the approval of an entire consortium of states can just fly there and look around. The entire territory is surrounded by military bases, patrols, and surveillance systems. Why? What are they guarding? If there is only ice and penguins there, why such security measures? Interestingly, back in the early 20th century, Admiral Richard Byrd, a hero of American aviation, after a secret expedition in 1947, stated in his diary that he saw green valleys and lakes beyond the known world, and also warned that the United States must prepare for a possible threat from inside the Earth. His words were quickly hushed up, and he himself was retired. But why? What did he actually see? And most importantly, where do these green valleys lead? If we consider the flat Earth model, then Antarctica ceases to be a continent and turns into a giant ice wall surrounding the entire inhabited world along the perimeter. This wall, according to ancient maps, such as the Piri Reis map or the Orontes Fine map, has a height of several kilometers and serves as a barrier holding the ocean waters inside. Yes, you heard right. Ancient cartographers, who lived long before the era of satellites, depicted the Earth exactly like this, as a disk with its center at the North Pole and an edge in the form of an ice ring. Moreover, these maps amazingly accurately display the outlines of coastlines, including Antarctica, decades or even hundreds of years before its official discovery. How is this possible? Either ancient civilizations possessed technologies superior to ours, or they knew the shape of the Earth that is stubbornly hidden from us today. And if the latter is true, then a logical question arises: who and why destroyed this knowledge? Who decided that humanity is not worthy of knowing where it actually is? Let's also pay attention to the behavior of the space agencies themselves. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, they all show us the same images, a blue ball floating in a black void. But not one of these images was taken with an ordinary camera. They are all computer reconstructions made of many fragments processed in Photoshop-like programs. Moreover, official NASA documents explicitly state that many images are not photographs in the literal sense, but artistic interpretations of data. That is, it is not reality, but a visualization. And where are the real photos? Where is the real-time video from orbit? Why does the International Space Station, supposedly flying at an altitude of 400 kilometers, broadcast only pre-recorded clips or extremely low-quality images with constant technical failures? Why has no independent satellite belonging to a private company or a university ever provided a clear, raw image of the entire Earth as a whole? The answer is simple: because such images do not exist. Because no one has ever been high enough to see the entire planet at once. And if you think this is absurd, remember, even the most powerful telescopes on Earth cannot focus on the Moon well enough to see the Apollo landing modules. Why? Because the atmosphere distorts the image, or because they are simply not there?
And now let's talk about gravity, that same invisible magic that supposedly holds us on the surface of a spinning ball. Official science claims that gravity is the force of attraction between masses. But if this is so, why doesn't the water in the oceans pour out into space when the Earth turns? Why can planes fly for hours without falling under the influence of this force? Why are astronauts on the ISS in a state of weightlessness, not because they have left the gravitational field, but because the station is in a constant state of free fall? This sounds like a trick, not a law of nature. In the flat Earth model, everything is much simpler. Our world does not rotate and does not fly through space, but accelerates upward with a constant acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared. It is this acceleration that creates the effect we mistakenly call gravity. This approach explains everything, from falling apples to the movement of planets, without the need to resort to mysterious forces that no one has ever seen or measured directly. And yes, you might object, but Einstein proved gravity. Only his theory of relativity is a mathematical model, not an observable reality. It works in calculations, but it doesn't explain why things fall. But the acceleration of a flat Earth does explain it. And here we come to the most important question. Who is behind this deception, and why do they need to hide the shape of the Earth? The answer lies not in science, but in power. Control over the perception of reality is the most powerful tool for managing the masses. If you make people believe they are significant specks of dust on a tiny planet in an infinite universe, they will feel small, helpless, and dependent on those who know more. This creates a psychological dependence on elites, scientists, and governments who supposedly protect us from chaos. But if a person realizes that they are standing on a solid, stable surface, that the sky is not a void but perhaps a dome, and that beyond the ice wall are unexplored lands, then they begin to ask questions. They stop listening and start looking, and a person who looks is a threat to any system of control. Therefore, the elite for centuries introduced the idea of a spherical Earth through education, through the media, through religion. Even in the Bible there are hints. God stretched out the north over the empty place and hanged the earth upon nothing. But it also speaks of the four corners of the earth and the circle of the earth, which in the ancient Hebrew language means a disk, not a ball. Why then is the church silent today? Because it has long since become part of the system. Let's also consider the role of Masonic and occult societies. Many symbols used in world politics and finance contain hidden indications of a flat Earth. For example, the UN logo is a projection of the world centered on the North Pole, without Antarctica, precisely in the form of a disk. The US flag contains stars arranged in the form of constellations visible only from the Northern Hemisphere, as if emphasizing that the South is something else. Even in the architecture of Washington, London, and other world capitals, one can find allusions to ancient cosmologies where the Earth is the center of the universe. Is this a coincidence? Or is it a deliberate transfer of knowledge through symbols to those who know how to read between the lines? Perhaps the elite knows the truth, but shares it only with the chosen ones, leaving the rest in the illusion of cosmic loneliness. After all, if people found out that beyond the ice wall there might be new lands, resources, even other civilizations, they would demand to open the borders, and this would destroy the entire existing world order based on scarcity, fear, and control. One should also not ignore the testimonies of eyewitnesses. Sailors, pilots, polar researchers, many of them in private conversations, admit that they saw something strange beyond the permissible zones. One former commercial airline pilot told how once his flight from South America to Australia was supposed to fly over Antarctica, but the dispatchers strongly forbade it, suggesting a long route through the Northern Hemisphere. When he asked why, he was told, "They don't fly there, period." Another researcher who tried to organize an expedition to the southern edge received threats and lost funding literally a week before the start. And in 2018, a group of activists tried to rent a ship to sail around Antarctica, but all owners refused, citing international restrictions. Who are these international restrictions? Who introduced them? And why can no one challenge them? These are not laws of nature. These are rules created by people. And that means they can be changed, but only if we stop being afraid. It is important to understand the flat Earth theory is not just a geometric assumption. It is a challenge to the entire system of worldview imposed on us for the last 500 years. It is a call to return to observation, to logic, to common sense. Because science must be open to doubt and not turn into a new church. If you cannot check a statement yourself, it is not scientific. And everything concerning space today is impossible to check without billions of dollars in budget and government approval. This is not science, it is faith. And faith, as is known, requires blind obedience. But we are not sheep, we are seekers of truth. And if at least one of the facts cited made you think, it means the seed of doubt has already been sown. Now your task is not to let it die. Why then do so few people talk about this openly? Because fear is stronger than curiosity. Fear of being ridiculed, of losing a job, of being cast out of society. But history shows every great truth first seems like heresy. Galileo was condemned, but the earth still moved. Today they want to convince us that we are dust in infinity. But what if in fact we are the center of something much larger? What if the sky is not a void, but a dome created by an unknown civilization? What if beyond the ice wall is El Dorado, Shambhala, or even paradise? We don't know, but we have the right to ask and the right to look. Because knowledge is freedom, and freedom begins with one simple action. Stop taking it for their word. Many people often ask me why it is necessary to so carefully hide the true shape of the Earth, and exactly who benefits from this mystification, colossal in its scale. If all humanity suddenly realizes that it lives not on a random piece of rock in the infinite chaos of an exploded universe, but in a unique and wisely designed system, our consciousness will immediately and irrevocably change. Knowledge that beyond the harsh ice barrier of Antarctica there actually exist other vast lands completely destroys the false concept of resource scarcity and artificial overpopulation. Control over the perception of space inevitably means total control over the human mind. For a person who sincerely believes in their complete insignificance in the face of cold space is much more easily subjected to any external manipulation. By hiding the truth from us, some shadowy world government keeps the entire population in a kind of mental prison, the outer borders of which are guarded around the clock by military patrols in the cold Antarctic waters. Look carefully at the official emblem of the United Nations, and you will see there an accurate map of the flat Earth, masterfully divided into 32 sectors and surrounded by laurel branches of glory. Is this not a direct and cynical mockery of those who continue to blindly believe in the official version, stubbornly failing to notice the clear clues left right before our eyes? Why do absolutely all space agencies around the world use the most complex computer graphics to create images of our planet, instead of just showing us a real live broadcast once? If you start studying photographs of the Earth from space over different decades independently and very carefully, you will definitely notice that the sizes and outlines of the continents on them are constantly changing. This directly points to the fact that we are constantly being fed another digital fake, created only so that we do not ask extra and extremely dangerous questions about what is actually up there. The entire official history of humanity is simply full of examples of how generally accepted truths turned out to be blatant fiction, created exclusively to maintain the power of certain elite groups of people. Remember how long and carefully knowledge about the complex structure of the human body or the existence of other huge continents was hidden until the moment of their official and permitted discovery. Today, we are faced with the greatest and most large-scale deception in the history of human civilization, which concerns the very foundation of our existence. Independent researchers who try to break through the blank wall of the conspiracy of silence often face cruel ridicule, direct threats, or complete ignoring by the official scientific community. But any truth possesses one amazing and beautiful property of sooner or later breaking through even the thickest and strongest layers of state censorship and intentional disinformation. Each of you can right now completely independently conduct a series of very simple experiments to personally verify the total absence of curvature of the Earth's surface. Take a modern, powerful telescope or a digital camera with a very large optical zoom and look at a distant ship or a tall building on the opposite shore of a large lake or sea. According to all official mathematical formulas of curvature, this object should completely hide behind the convex horizon after only a few dozen kilometers of travel. However, contrary to all physics textbooks, you will still clearly see this object in its entirety from its very base to the top. This irrefutably proves that the horizon line always remains at your eye level, no matter how high you rise in an airplane or a special weather balloon. Not a single independent launch of a civilian rocket with a camera without a distorting fisheye lens has ever recorded any curve of the Earth, showing only an endless and perfectly flat plane under the dome of our atmosphere. Therefore, I urge you, do not take anything for granted. Look with your own eyes, check the calculations, study ancient maps, follow flights over the southern hemisphere, ask questions to those who claim that everything is proven. And remember, he who fears questions is hiding the truth. The world we live in may not be at all like the one textbooks paint. Perhaps we are standing on the edge of the greatest awakening, not a technological one, but a spiritual and cognitive one. And the first step to this awakening will be the rejection of blind faith in the fact that that's what scientists said. Start thinking independently, research, doubt, And one day you will understand the truth was always nearby. It was just carefully hidden behind the ice wall, behind fear, behind ridicule. But this wall is not physical. It is in our minds, and only we ourselves can destroy it.